voters turned out in record numbers and delivered an historic victory. Earlier today, Senator Kerry called with his congratulations. We had a really good phone call. He was very...
President George W. Bush came to power with a focus on promoting economic growth, and as a result, his administration often prioritized the interests of the U.S. economy over climate initiatives.
The approach taken under the Kyoto Protocol would have required the United States to make deep and immediate cuts in our economy to meet an arbitrary target. It would have cost our economy up to $400 billion, and we would have lost 4.9 million jobs. As President of the United States, charged with safeguarding the welfare of the American people.
By 2006, Bush signed the Energy Policy Act, which provided tax credits for renewable energy and promoted the development of biofuels. Further signed the Energy Independence and Security Act, which included provisions for increased vehicle fuel efficiency standards and mandated the use of renewable fuels. By the end of his term, he announced a goal to halt the growth of U.S. greenhouse gas emissions by 2025 but did not propose any specific policies. In the 2008 presidential election, the United States made history, signaling a new era of progress and inclusivity.
Hello, Chicago! If there is anyone out there who still doubts that America is a place where all things are possible, who still wonders if the dream of our founders is alive in our time, who still questions the power of our democracy, tonight is your answer.
Upon entering office in 2009, President Obama signed the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, a landmark piece of legislation aimed at stabilizing and revitalizing the U.S. economy in the aftermath of the 2008 financial. This included $90 billion in funding for clean energy and energy efficiency projects. In the year after, he signed the Affordable Care Act, which included provisions to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and promote renewable energy. In 2013, he announced his Climate Action Plan, a comprehensive strategy aimed at reducing greenhouse gas emissions.
And this is my plan to meet it. A plan to cut carbon pollution, a plan to protect our country from the impacts of climate change, and a plan to lead the world in a coordinated assault on a changing climate. Today, about 40% of America's carbon pollution comes from our power plants. But here's the thing, right now, there are no federal limits to the amount of carbon pollution that those plants can pump into our air. None. Zero. We limit the amount of toxic chemicals like mercury and sulfur and arsenic in our air or our water. But power plants can still dump unlimited amounts of carbon pollution into the air for free. That's not right, it's not safe, and it needs to stop. So, today, for the sake of our children and the health and safety of all Americans, I'm directing the Environmental Protection Agency to put an end to the limitless dumping of carbon pollution from our power plants and complete new pollution standards for both new and existing power plants.
2 years later, he reaffirmed United States action to help battle climate change.
Good afternoon, everybody. Today is a historic day in the fight to protect our planet for future generations. 10 months ago in Paris, I said before the world that we needed a strong global agreement to reduce carbon pollution and to set the world on a low carbon course. The result was the Paris Agreement. Last month, the United States and China, the world's two largest economies and largest emitters, formally joined that agreement together. And today, the world has officially crossed the threshold for the Paris Agreement to take effect. Today, the world meets the moment. And if we follow through on the commitments that this Paris Agreement embodies, history may well judge it as a turning point for our planet.
In 2016, Obama banned new offshore drilling in parts of the Arctic and Atlantic Oceans, citing environmental concerns.
Now it's time for America to bind the wounds of division. Have to get together. To all Republicans and Democrats and independents across this nation, I say it is time for us to come together as one united people.
After entering office in 2017, President Trump initiated several actions aimed at reversing many of the climate policies and regulations put in place by his predecessor, President Obama.
My solemn duty to protect America and its citizens. The United States will withdraw from the Paris Climate Accord Thank you. Thank you. First, today's Energy Independence Action calls for an immediate reevaluation of the so-called Clean Power Plan. Perhaps no single regulation threatens our miners, energy workers, and companies more than this crushing attack on American industry. Second, we are lifting the ban on federal leasing for coal production. Third, we are lifting job-killing restrictions on the production of oil, natural gas, clean coal, and shale energy. And finally, we are returning power to the states where that power belongs.
In 2018, Trump proposed a budget that would cut funding for renewable energy research and development.
It was a massive power grab. The EPA's regulators were putting people out of jobs by the hundreds of thousands. And regulations and permits started treating our wonderful small farmers and small businesses as if they were a major industrial polluter. They treated them horribly.
Trump made headlines for his efforts to revive the U.S. coal industry, which had been in decline for years due to competition from cheaper and cleaner forms of energy.
And I know this doesn't matter to you, but we are putting our great coal miners back to work.
In 2020, Trump's administration finalized rules weakening fuel efficiency standards for cars and light trucks.
The people of this nation have spoken. They've delivered us a clear victory, a convincing victory, a victory for we the people. We've won with the most votes ever cast on a presidential ticket in the history of the nation. 74 million.
On his first day in office, President Biden made it clear that he intended to steer the United States back on course in the fight against climate change.
Another order Biden signed the return of the United States in the Paris Climate Agreement, an accord Trump had decided to leave last year.
Just like we need to be a unified nation in response to COVID-19, we need a unified national response to climate change. We need to meet the moment with the urgency it demands.
Biden introduced a $2 trillion plan to overhaul and upgrade the nation's infrastructure, calling it a transformational effort.
It's a once-in-a-generation investment in America, unlike anything we've seen or done since we built the interstate highway system and the space race decades ago. In fact, it's the largest American jobs investment since World War II. It will create millions of jobs, good-paying jobs, will grow the economy, make us more competitive around the world, promote our national security interests, and put us in a position to win the global competition with China in the upcoming years. It's big, yes. It's bold, yes. And we can get it done.
he proposed a clean energy standard, which would require electricity providers to produce a certain amount of clean energy by 2035.
The United States sets out on the road to cut greenhouse gases in half by the end of this decade. That's where we're headed as a nation. And that's what we can do if we take action to build an economy that's not only more prosperous, but healthier, fair, and cleaner for the entire planet.
During Trump's tenure, he implemented policies aimed at increasing oil and gas operations, but Biden aimed to reduce the country's dependence on fossil fuels.
You know, when you think about it, it's a shame we even have to be doing this. We should be way ahead by now.
The next election for America is crucial as it will determine the direction of the country's policies on important issues.
Freedom. Personal freedom is fundamental to who we are as Americans.
There's nothing more important, nothing more sacred.
That's been the work of my first term, to fight for our democracy.
This shouldn't be a red or blue issue.
To protect our rights, to make sure that everyone in this country is treated equally and that everyone is given a fair shot at making it.
In order to make America great and glorious again, I am tonight announcing my candidacy for President of the United States.